Hello, and welcome to my podcast, The Melancholy Guy Talks. And tonight, and right now, I'm talking about recovery, living with addiction. In this podcast, I'm sharing my journey through life while being an open, polyamorous African American male living in recovery. I am the Melancholy Guy, Calvin, or CPJR if you know me. And today, I definitely believe that change I must or die I will. To learn more about the Melancholy Guy, go to Instagram and click the link in the bio. Also, with a donation of just $1, you can have access to my first series of ethical monogamy. My first series on ethical monogamy, the fun stuff that started my podcast journey. See my Patreon page for more info. Links will be in the show notes. And also, if you go to Instagram, you can get a link there in the bio. So let's talk. Today's date is 3/22/2020, and it's been 64 days since I felt the need to pick up my drug of choice, and it's been great. Today's episode is going to be a recap show, the first 60 days, part 1, episode 51. And for the remainder of March, as well as for the month of April, I will have a weekly topic that will be aired in 15-minute increments. One released on Sunday tonight, and the second half released on Thursday. So be sure to tune in for both. Well, welcome back, and I decided to do a recap show today. I've been talking about the first 90 days of recovery based on addictions.com, three stages to recovery. So there's 90 days, and there's early recovery, and then there's relapse prevention. I'm paraphrasing those because they are different, but basically there were 3 parts to it, and I've been talking about for the last 6 episodes or so. I've been talking about what it is to be in early recovery, the first 90 days, because that's where I am. I've been going through 90 days, and since I've made it through 60 days, I decided I'm just going to go ahead and recap, where I've been, where I am, and where I see myself for the next 30 days, because that'll be the end of my 90 days. So the first thing I want to talk about today, what's been happening with me in the first 90 days, is the first thing I did when I found myself at rock bottom. And me being a person who has been through 12 steps before and kind of knows what's going on, is like when you set that first step. And I like to say it the way Russell Brand says it: my life is fucked. That made sense to me. And the first thing I did was I said I need to go about this by setting intentions, and that's what I did. I just thought about what do I want with the rest of my life? Like I can't continue doing what I've been doing. My life is basically fucked up, and I just thought about what is the first intention that I need to set. And then the first intention I needed to set was I needed to be in recovery, and recovery has to be the most important thing. Now, for me, when I set something to be the most important thing, it becomes everything in my life. You know what I mean? Like everything that I do, think about, read about, talk about, is always has to be about that one important thing. When I was a Christian, I talked about Christianity. I looked it up, read about it. I married, a Christian wife at the time, and that's what life was. So for me, I had to be about recovery. Now, some people may say that why am I not in the 12-step programs, 12-step meetings, NA, and all that? I'm not ruling that out. I do practice 12-step principles. I do know the steps. The steps are incorporated in my life. But for me at this point, The first step or the first concrete thing that I did was make recovery my life. Was I started this podcast, and then once for me starting the podcast, meaning that I have to do research for it, I have to prepare for it, I have to be on a schedule. So that's part of my program, and then to reinforce that, I started reading certain books. I'm reading Russell Brand's book on recovery now, with a friend, and we read it and review it and listen to it in the car and things like that, so that I can incorporate that step work, or just hearing about the steps, just the spirituality behind the steps in my life on a day-to-day basis. Also, what I've done to um, make sure that I have recovery that's about my life is I have an app on my phone it's called the Pocket Rehab app that tracks my day, but it also has groups. So I'll go in the groups, and I'll look and I'll answer questions about from other addicts who are having issues, and I'll also post how I'm doing in there, and just start with conversations. And if anyone's asking for help with any particular thing, I will just lend a hand and type some kind of response into the community. So it feels like I'm giving back. It feels like I'm keeping centered, keeping my life centered around recovery. It's basically what I'm doing, because recovery has to be, for me, the most important thing in my life. There's no, for me at this point, there's no other way around it. I've tried to do other things to kind of distract myself from recovery, or distract myself from drug use, and those things just didn't work. I have to have recovery as in the center of my life. The next thing that I'm doing is that once I've set that program. Oh, I also go to online meetings, because for me right now it'll be difficult. For one thing, it'll be difficult to get to face-to-face meetings right now since I'm not driving. But also, this is gonna, I encourage anyone and everyone that if you're dealing with an addiction, or live with addiction, or know someone in addiction, encourage them to go to meetings, because it's important. I went to a ton of meetings. It's important to go to meetings, but like I said, if you listen to any of the previous podcasts, a lot of stuff that I know now, I did not pick up from, or I did not consciously pick them up from meetings. I probably did pick up things that I know now to be true, and I'm incorporating those things into my life. But as far as like conscious me getting those things consciously from meetings with the sponsor and all that, it didn't click with me. Which I'm not knocking NA meetings. You definitely should go, but there is one thing that you most importantly should have, is that you have to have a program, and you have to consciously work that program, because as an addict, or someone who has a substance addiction problem, you are working a program. You know what I'm saying? You're working a program to either continue your drug use, or you're working a program to kill yourself, or a program that's completely destructive. You're doing one of the two. You're either consciously working the program of recovery to keep yourself clean, or you're subconsciously working or consciously working a program to continue your drug use and your destruction. So for me, I have to consciously, or I do consciously, put work a program. I work a certain routine that I do every single morning, and that is, I read a certain thing. I think about a topic for the day that I'm going to follow, a certain attention that I'm going to pursue, and I check in like on some apps, and I talk to a certain person, and those things I do every single day, and plus I go to that online meeting and do something that has to do with this show. That's my program, and that I do every single day. And also, I'm down to 5 minutes left, and this is the first part of the show. Also, if I have an issue, let's say if I feel myself, because I'm working the program, and I know the steps. You know what I mean, like the moral inventory. I do that all the time. If I notice that I'm off, I'll bring it up with someone. I talk to someone about it, and I have people in my life now that I can talk to those things about, and that brings me to my last point for this show. What I've been doing the last 30 days is I've been attracting my tribe. Now I have like the one anchor partner, Kim, who I can talk to a lot because of her counseling and ministerial background. I'm able to talk to her, and plus she has a 5-year knowledge of my history, both using and not using, and she's able to like listen to what I'm saying. And when a lot of times I'm doing now is I'm not trying to repeat the same mistakes. You know what I mean? Like I know, like for me, right now I know when I'm off. You know, I'm not centered, and I try to stay centered. That's a term that is used like in, I don't know, Buddhism or people that practice mindfulness. It's like I know where well, I'm trying to know better or get a better knowledge of where my center is. Sort of like if I'm too upset or too angry or you know what I mean? Because I have to. For me, I have to be in charge of my emotions, not in charge. I have to control my emotions. I just this weekend when we were riding in the car up towards her house, and she said something to me like Friday morning. I had a problem with my program. I actually had a thought of using. Then it went into a bad dream, and I'm like, I worked through it. I knew that I had some anxiety based on my job I'm starting. I didn't have some information from them. That led me to feel anxious, and I had this dream about, some crazy dream about a job situation. And then that led me to having this weird feeling that I had used. And I'm like, I just mentioned her that I mentioned to her because of, this whole coronavirus thing. My schedule's off. I hadn't actually attended a couple online meetings that I like, and I hadn't actually did any reading, of Russell Brand's book. So I was off centered. You know what I mean? Like I was letting other things get in front of my recovery, and then I started feeling the effects of that. So she admonished me, as she should. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna need you to keep, as she should. She has that ability. I've given her the authority to be able to say to me, I'm going to need you to do your recovery every day. Right? So the first time my ego, her telling me that, and me just resorting back to me already off center, I'm rearing up, right? I'm rearing up like, because I'm thinking about the old days when I used to get nagged by a mate or a partner or whoever about, what I'm doing wrong, because I'm not, because I'm basically all I'm trying to do is make them happy again so that I can continue doing what I normally do. But I'm thinking about I'm trying to change today, right? So I'm seeing that I know that I'm already talking to her about being off center. I'm already knowing what she's saying, and she reminded me like she's tribe, and she's reminding me that this is what tribe is for. This is what you asked me to do, and I'm saying, oh, right, right. So I'm seeing that as I move forward, in my recovery, I'm seeing that how easy it is to fall back or come out, get off center, fall back into old habits, and then you're right back. I'll be right back where I used to be, and that was chasing down. Next thing I'm doing, I'm building resentments. I'm having frustration. I'm finding ways to sneak out. So that's gonna be it for the day. This part of the program. I'm gonna be back on Thursday for the second part. I want to thank you for listening. I'm going to take a quick second for the still suffering addict. If you are using, you don't have to use. Please seek out help. If you have any questions that you want me to talk about on the show, I'm starting a new section. It's called Ask an Addict. But I'm going to go ahead and end it there. And I'm going to say, always remember to love and respect yourself first, and everything else will take care of itself. Peace and namaste.